Hello, Shirley here. Thank you for joining me. I'm going to do another painting using acrylic, and I'm going to use the same acrylics I did before, which are the cheap $4, $3 a tube, Chromacryl, just to show that you can create art with the basic materials. You don't need to spend a lot of money. Before I painted on paper, this time the difference is going to be I will paint on a canvas. So it's about 12 by 16. It would have cost less than $10. It's a funny little one in so much as it doesn't have a real square corner. It has rounded corners, and that could be nice. You don't need to have it framed, but you will need to paint right around the edge to make that look good. Now, I'm going to do a sunrise, and it looks simple. I could say it's for beginners, but I kind of think it's going to be very hard. So it's an intermediate. I'll put it down as intermediate. But if you're a beginner, have a go, because it'll force you to make some moves that you might not be comfortable with, and it'll force you to learn. I think it's worth it. So I'll just turn the camera around. By the way, Merry Christmas. If you had a good one, that's fantastic. We had a fantastic one here. We had lots of family, and we swam in a pool. We did fun things, laid around, watched television, watched the cricket, watched the Sydney to Hobart yacht race, beginning of it in the harbour, from the TV set, of course. We didn't go out onto the harbour. But that's always exciting. I love that. That was on Boxing Day. So anyway, we had a good time. I hope you did too. Okay, first things first is to draw the picture, and I'll just it's a 2/3 type of painting. So I'll draw in my horizon, which is going to roughly be the waterline, because my sister Kerry, thank you Kerry, took this photograph for me, and it's a sunrise, but we have a lot of smoke over Sydney, so we're getting weird colours in the sky. So it kind of looks like a sunset, and I was asked to do a sunset, thank you, by a lovely person, a reader, a watcher, member of the audience. So I'm just drawing, I'm going to exaggerate those rocks out into the water. I'll still put a touch of the wall in so that it's got the right reference for where it is. Going back there, the pontoon is about there. It's a sort of it's a jetty followed by a sort of a curve or a ramp going down, which then meets a pontoon, and that sort of almost goes to halfway across the picture. So I'll just pop it out there. Various verticals. There's a little bit of headland behind it. So I'm going to run the water up higher than that original line I put in. Just changing my mind a little bit. Bringing the water's edge down. Line for that headland. The bridge goes in, and I'm not going to even try and draw that freehand. It's no point. Just wonder if it's horizontal. I think it is. Okay. I know that's a funny thing, but I've lived with that bridge, and I've always looked at it from underneath and thought it might have looked a little bit sloping uphill. But no, they've got it like that. There are some supports under the right side, but I won't put those in. So on the other side of that bridge, the land goes down to nothing. And then here we have a tree that is quite mysteriously shaped, in so much as I don't know where its trunk is. I can't quite tell. There seems to be a big frame boxy thing there, but I'm not quite sure what that is. So Won't put the sun in, but I know it's around about there. And could even have it lower, just for dramatic emphasis, or maybe not. Sometimes it's risky to make decisions like that. Now the boats will go in random ways after I've put the background on, so I won't bother with indicating where they are at this stage. And I think there's a duck with some ducklings behind. Now there's some reeds in the water here which I might put in. It looks like it's very shallow. Now that said, what I'm going to do is mix up. I'm going to do the background first, and I'm going to blend it from the blue down to a white to a blue, and then I'm going to go from a pink out to the blue. It's complicated, and I'll just have to see how I go. Can't say for sure. I will start with ultramarine blue. In this kit they call it a warm blue. To me it's a cool blue. They also call that colour cobalt, and as far as I'm concerned that's cerulean. But that said, I'm going to put a couple of blues out just to cover myself, and I shall put out a lot of white because I want the white to be the medium, so to speak, the paint that holds everything together. Now I'm using a very big brush, just make sure it's clean. Now the brushes and paints and things are mentioned below. That's one reason why it's good to be able to view this video on a computer. So I'm going to start with mixing the white and a little bit of ultramarine blue together. So I'm making it quite opaque. I'm not going to start with transparency like I would in either watercolour, or if I was doing this on paper I would think about transparency, but I'm not going to do that. So look up here, I'm just trying to mix this first colour, which is quite strong up there. I often put it on the page. That's why, another reason why it's good to print out your page, print out your picture. You can be colour matching like that, whereas if you're working off a screen, your computer screen or TV, you can't quite see what you can't do that dab thing. It's still transparent up here, so what I'm going to do is work all the way down. You can try and do it in one go. If it doesn't work in one go, I'll have to let it dry and I'll go over it for a second go. So see, all my brush marks are showing through, and that's kind of because it's not quite opaque enough. So I try and add a bit more white as I come down. I'll go back up again, blend it down. Quite white here. Totally ignoring the sun at this stage. That sort of thing will just mess up the flow. So I'm going to get it right down here. I'll wash the brush. Just going to add the warm red in as we go towards the horizon. There's a tiny bit of goldy yellow needed, so luckily I've got this gold yellow in this set as opposed to lemon yellow. So I'm just popping these out in a random way. I'm not being methodical. I don't know if you can see that on the screen. You can't. I'll just push the camera out a little bit more. Try and go that way. How about that? Better. And I shall get more white out. Because I'm sticking with these brushes that I bought, I'm not going to go for a bigger one, but I could normally go for a larger brush, like almost a house brush. Okay, I take that up. There's two things I'm doing. By going back up there gently, I'm I'm keeping the paint a little bit alive. I'm not letting it set and dry. So I'm going to put a little touch of the gold in here with a little bit of the red, so I hope I don't make it go green, but that's the possibility when you add the yellow. Just adding a little bit of this red to the white that I had mixed on the plate. I call it a plate. It's not a plate anymore, it's a palette. I was using paper plates for a while. I ran out. To concentrate. If I go quiet, it's because I'm trying to focus. Okay. There's a slightly darker line there, and I have to think about how I want to approach that. I'll just clean my brush. I won't wet it. I'll just take it off and see if I can just spread that sideways, like with a bit of a zigzag, and then come back over it. Yeah, I think that's blended it better. Coming down to a stronger base. I might try and be quite dramatic and put very dark, or relatively dark, behind there. Now I'm going to repeat that process coming back out again. I'm not going to worry about these edges. I'm leaving those out. I'm focusing on this central area here. And I need a lot of white again. I want it pale, quickly to go pale. In fact, with the water, it's paler than the sky, so I might start with it on a lighter level, right in there behind the bridge. Coming out to general pink smooth area, go through that little bit of yellow again. It's almost like a transition through peach through to the blue. You'd think it would go purple, wouldn't you, that transition there, but it's definitely, in the photograph, it's definitely a blue and a yellow blue transition from the pink. Okay. I'm going to add some white in there just to make that nice and clear. Once again, I've ended up with a touch of blue there that I'm not happy about, so I'll put white over it in a zigzaggy way to mix it in. I'll put a little bit more pink at the top, and I'll see how I go blending that back. So this is on a very hot day, and this is how you blend with acrylics. It's not that different to oil paint, it's not that hard. You just have to be aware that it will dry on you if you go a bit slow, so you have to have the speed about it. So I'll just bring that down. I'm mixing all the paint now that's on that palette, all the white going into this blue area. And I actually want to darken this off, so I've got myself in a bit of a pickle by having too big a jump from that paler colour to that one. And the only way I think I can get around that is by a bit more white, and I've just used it all up, so let's see how we go here. Just add it in a random way. Then I'll try and use tissues to dry off my brush, or to wipe the brush rather than my cloth. You can end up with the cloth getting too dirty. It becomes useless. Okay. That's not too bad. Just for the fun of it, I'll go back, I'll return to the ultramarine blue that's at the top. colour I had up there and just blend that back into that other blue. Alright, now I'm hoping I don't need to go over that again. I'll see how it dries. I will be adding in the sun as an overlay layer. Just have to dry. I might get the hairdryer on actually. I'm not happy. I can see brush marks all the way through it, and I do want to have a smoother blend as I can. One of the reasons it's good to dry your work with a dryer is so that you can be one step ahead of your palette. So you don't want the palette to dry as well. I want to use those paints, I don't want to waste them. So I'm going to redo that. I'll put a lot more white out because it'll have to go top and bottom. The other colours are rich enough to be okay. I'm just going to test it. Sometimes you think it's dry and it's not, so you can just test a little bit, see if you can move it. I can't move it with my brush, but I can rub it off with my finger, but I'm not going to use fingers, I'm going to use brushes, so that's good enough for me to start again. So I'm going to use water in the white and blue and cerulean, ultramarine, mix those together. Once again, oops, try and match that top. I started with adding water to this, but now that I'm thinking about it, maybe it would have been better not to have. I could have just done it straight with that tube white paint. Okay, let's see how we go. Being the second layer, this will be so much easier to go on. So I've got a little bit more ultramarine at the top, that's all right. Okay. Got various, my brush is not totally covered with pure paint, so I'm getting a few little areas of white in there, but I'm going to have to blend out. So rather than going by what I had before, I'm going to keep looking at the photograph and trying to make sure the colours are maintained there. So put the white in to start blending out the blue. A couple of horizontal strokes like that, we'll start doing that. More white. I really want it to look like a morning rather than an evening, so the lighter the sky, the better. Oops. Keep the camera. We're going into the yellow, slightly yellow area, so I'll mix that. Can't seem to avoid that green thing happening. Anyway, it's a warming of the blue, so that's still logical that it would look like this. If you want it to be really economical, you could be working down at the bottom at the same time. But I'm more concerned about getting these colours more accurate. Now I wash the brush so that after a while it gets clogged. The hairs get filled with paint. You need to empty it out. Start with a fresh amount of paint on the tip of the brush. It's not forced down into it. The tip of the hair is not forced down into the hair base. So now I'm mixing up a little bit of the red and the white. I'm hoping you can see that. You probably can't there. I'm getting the red and the white going here. Just going to fill that in. Straight pink. And what I did want to do was add a little bit of the yellow to this mix to make it a little bit warmer. I thought it was a little bit cool back then, and I was going to go over it anyway. So this has given me an opportunity. Now I'll clean that brush, paint off that to save the water and to save my brush. So I'm going to put some white in the middle and blend those two. Now it should be yellow, but I'm just a little bit worried that yellow's making hay with the blue. So I'll put the white in there first. Now I'm going to touch in like that, a little bit of yellow, and then blend that. It might be a bit more controllable. I'll take some white back up. Oh. I ended up with white and the blue there. Just white by itself. So this is, I'm just adding in white here and there. That's just bulking it up. Now I'm blending it in. Just to give that feeling of graduation above the gold colours. Okay. This is sort of the thing that takes practice. I don't practice it often enough. That's fine. I can't see any reason to vary that now. While that blue is wet, I might add in the circular area for the sun so that it blends. Put white all the way through because the middle has to be white in the end while that blue is wet. Now, in or out? Might go out. Does it make sense? One way or the other there should be. Because the white is the wettest, I'll pull that one in. The white is the wettest part that I've just put on. Now I'm going to feather it out a little bit again. So I've gone, clean the brush, try and get the brush as dry as possible. Even go for a dry brush at this stage. A second brush. Feather out that paint. Okay. So I'm going to now go for a slightly pinker area. Then a slightly yellower area on the inside of that. And I'll get the dry brush. See how I go blending it? I'm following this circle around. I'm not taking it out any wider, and I'm not taking it in. Just trying to blend it sideways. A very difficult job. I'll use the tip of my brush to make a bit of a circle with the yellow. Put some white in just for reference so I can see that I'm making a difference with that colour. Make sure the white goes in the centre. Interestingly enough, this camera might have moved a little bit because the glow is not quite centred. Not sure I'm happy about that. I think I might just pull out that white. I'll come back to it later. I'll let it dry. That can be an underpainting. Giving me a vague idea of how to finish it. It's too big at the moment. I want to make it smaller. I think that's a bit too big. I think that's the camera might have made that glow more than it needed to. But that said, I've got this undergrowth. I mean, I've got the underneath section here. Clean brushes. I don't know where I'm at with the brushes. I'll clean them both. Often when you use a brush as a dry brush blender like that, be careful not to just let it sit there for a little bit, because it'll dry, the paint in it will dry, and the paint can dry like a solid glue, which is basically what it is. So I'm going to take I'm going to start with white, just for contrast's sake. It is really pink back there, but put the white over the top of the existing pink, and then I'll push pink back into it. And I'll make it a little bit warmish. I'm adding a little bit of the red and the yellow there. So I'll push that in, flat that off. So, being water, it's going to have all sorts of patterns and things on it. Not so much the sky, but this water part of it does have. So the areas I'm just going to go to white back there. And I know that I'll be coming over the top with the different reflections. But in the meantime, where it can just get a clear mirror of the sky, I do need to reflect what's above. With a little bit of the yellow. I'll turn this palette around so hopefully it's in sight of the camera. A little bit of the yellow and a little bit of the... So it's a kind of peachy warmish colour for the reflection. A little bit warmer, maybe because of what's in the water. Never be sure. Now, just going to, oops. That's the problem, by dipping your brush into water all the time, you can end up with too much water on your brush, and that makes your paint go thin, and you don't want that. Sometimes you want the paint to maintain its opacity. In this case, it's definitely not watercolour technique. And that's the reason. The difference is I'm on a canvas. If I was on paper, that's when you can do watercolour technique very nicely. Okay, so I'm coming down to the blue area so I can mix a little bit of blue with that. With the white I meant. And the cerulean blue is good. So that's given me a much better cover, that second layer. I know I said before to be careful of the edges, but I'm totally ignoring them. Can always go back later and try and fix them. Or you can have the painting framed, which is probably the correct thing to do. Now, still not sure what I'm doing up here. I think I might give myself an opportunity to go to pure white up there so that I can repaint those colours in. At the moment, having the blue behind is just too overpowering. So the best thing you can do now, I think, is to white it out as much as possible. So I'm just going to make it a big white circle. Not worry about that interior. As long as that's white, I can work over it with the other colours. But I will definitely be feathering that edge now while I've got the white while the white is wet. Do not want it to be having to go back and redo that blue. So I'm just going over it with the brush. I'm not really able to tell you why. I mean, yeah, I know why. I'm trying to soften the edges, but there's not really any trick to it because the paint is thick in parts and thin in other parts, and so I can only just keep dabbing it on and hoping that I can get a blend. All the tricks up my sleeve, which is tissues. When one side's dry and the other side's wet, like in this case, I've obviously got wet water. Let me just rephrase this. The whiteness is wet and the blue is dry underneath. That's about the best I can do at this stage. If I keep going, I will get in trouble. That's as it is. Sometimes you have to choose your battles. Now my next battle is going to be what to do with this paint on this palette. I really don't want all that white. At this stage I want very, very dark. So I will transfer it to another page. Now to make a nice dark colour, I will do my burnt umber. Where's the blue gone? Ultramarine blue, which I have there anyway. I'll just add a little bit more to that swatch, that patch. Now, I'm going to use a smaller brush. Just one like that, just a flat brush, nothing special, but just slightly smaller than I was using before because I want to start putting in the detail of the land. And luckily with this landscape, it's nearly all, how could you call it? It's nearly all monotone, just one colour. So it's going to be a lot easier to paint than say a cityscape or light buildings. This is all dark. We've got the lights of the boats, they'll go in last. So at this stage I'll go dark and I'll just go for it in the bridge area. Straight there. Oops. I am sloping it down a little bit because I just feel that's the way it should be. Very dramatic arch underneath. Goes to a very fine point. I'll try and do it justice, but I'll have to do it in a number of passes. I won't try and do it in a swoop. Some detail under there because there's things happening. Now, see the brush? It's all blobbed up with paint. Really have to stop that. Try and be aware that that's happening. Wipe it off and try and keep your paint on the end of the hairs. There we go, that's better. Now, just to make this easier for myself, I'm just going to do lots of little vertical, my fingers touching the canvas behind. So I'm just doing little vertical strokes. I'm doing vertical strokes just to make it easy on that area. Then I'll come back, straighten up the top edge, a couple of little lines. So rather than think you're going to have to do it in one long line, you don't. You can break it up into small sections and have that run into the, in that case I'm running that into bushland. And the bushland is going to be just as dark and mysterious. So by mixing the blue and the brown together, you end up with a nice combination of dark neutral greys. Some of them are bluish, some of them are brownish. It just is perfect for this type of landscape. So take it right down to there. Not going to worry about those boats. I'm going to go straight across the land there. Now this is where you don't want to be using water at all. Water will just thin this paint out too much. I'm putting it on straight out of the tube and I can still see transparency. I can still see my canvas underneath. And that, which means I might have to go over and do a second coat like I did for the background. But we'll see. But what I can do is just smooth that all out. Doesn't matter, I don't need the texture in there yet. It'll have to be the next layer where I put the texture in. So we'll take it down the side a little bit. At the back there's a very dull grey, distant, misty shot, so run that out like that. Comes in under the bridge. Then we get back into medium ground, so that's medium. I've still got a bit of white on my brush. I'm filling this area in here. Can't quite see what's happening there. I have a feeling there's boats and buildings, but I'm just going to have to be a little bit abstract because it's not clear for me what it is. I might just put the beginning of that pontoon going out into the ocean there, into the harbour. This is Sydney Harbour, by the way. It's around near Hunters Hill. There's lots of little nooks and crannies to harbours, and this is no different. It's got lots of beautiful little inlets where people can have their homes nearby and look at it, enjoy it. Okay, so this foreground here is a straight wall, but I'll give it a bit of a curve just for the sake of artistic license. I'll put in some perspective lines to make it look like it's going away. That means wider towards you, the camera, and closer in the distance. Now, I'll also be putting in rocks. There's lovely rocks down here, and as I mentioned before, I really would like to exaggerate them. So at the moment, just tonal. Colours aren't really a thing. There is some light on a big round rock there, so I'll just leave that free for putting in detail later. This is the path. Funny big block. I don't know what that is, but I'll just ignore it. I'm not going to put that ladder in either. That looks like a concrete ladder, steel ladder going down to the water's edge. Someone's very determined to. I'd say this might be the side of a retaining wall, I'm not sure, but just put a little bit of a vertical there, just to stop the eye running off the page. And then of course I've got the grass to go in here. So I'll just put a general shading there to keep an idea for tonal values. I'm going to wash that brush out well because it's getting full of paint. Now, this tree can go in, it's quite dramatic. I might use a chisel shaped brush. Mix again the same colours. I'm going to, it's right up here in the sky, and it's random shapes to start with. I'll do the outside edge just to get that out of the way. Come down. Well, you really want it to be black, so I will probably go in with some black later. But at this stage, brown and blue together makes that beautiful, deep, dark, rich shade. Homemade black. Okay, it's in. I'll have another go at this pontoon. Just a bit worried about what size brush I'm using for the pontoon. Usually I can use a very large brush to do a very fine line. And I'll demonstrate that and see if it works, and if it doesn't, I shall have to eat my words. Sometimes the very edge of a large brush can stay under control a bit better, but no, I don't think so for that. I'm getting a blob already. These verticals don't seem to make any sense. They seem to be uneven. I'll put them down to a spot underneath. I'll put that to very black there. Might even put a little vertical on each side of that to make it look like it's proper pontoon. Then of course I've got, this is the beginning of reflection in the water. I'll keep to the same grey, neutral grey, blue, brown combination. Come back, and then just as it gets solid in there, and then out here, just go to lines like that. Now, using the brown in this wall, just darken it so that it gives, I can come back into that with a bit of white, which I might do straight away while it's wet. Mix the white in there. If I don't mix it in straight away, it'll just go over the top and won't have the same interesting texture. So they're kind of bricks. They shouldn't be totally white, they should mix in with what's underneath. So if I leave them totally white, I'll have to come back later and darken them off, which is possible. And while that rock is right in the front, in the foreground there, this one, I can't resist but not to put a little bit of flesh tone on it, because it's kind of reflecting the sky and it's kind of got its own yellow colour of sandstone, probably. All the rocks in Sydney are sandstone, just about. Some basalt, I think. Some of those other rocks I shall also colour up because they would be facing the same situation. Even though here they're very dark, I'm just going to make them browny coloured. So just random. This brick, top of the brick at the front here, I shall also do this golden sandstone tone. I'll go a bit red towards the foreground. So it's a matter of looking at the photo and not necessarily copying it slavishly, because you can't be sure it's going to be what you see anyway. I mean, what's really there. So I find photographs are good guides for composition, good guide for tone, but terrible guides for colour, because the printer will print out its own colour, and I fiddled with this in Photoshop to make it a little bit warmer than it needed to be. While we've got yellow and a bit of blue here, I'm going to mix those together to turn them into green, and I'll add a little bit of the green and a bit of red to this at the front here to make it a little bit grassy, and also back here on top of that area. So just digging it in. You can start using more colour towards the front because it's just the eye has more focus on this. Towards the back, you make it look less colourful, you make it look more colourful at the front. That's just the basic rule for landscape. Those green grasses I've got there and not very realistic. I need to knock them back a little bit. Anyway, so I'm just trying to think of the best way to do it. I think I'll put some more yellow out on my... In the shot they look like they're very much coloured by the redness of the sun. And that's probably what I should maintain, that overall red hue. So I'll just go to a little bit of orange. and a little bit of white that I have left and a little bit of the blue, just to make a dirty orangey colour. So I'm going to go straight to the burnt umber. So scrub it to the side. Don't quite know what I'm doing here yet because it's got that brick wall, which I'm not sure I'm going to even put in. Because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It's hard to add it. So just scrape up with the back of the brush, make some grass, leaves. The way this works when it's just at the right time for the paint to be half dry. So you put it on when it's thick paint and have it just at a point where it's not going to run. Then you can make some nice shapes in it. I'll come back to that in a little while. I think it needs more detail at the front. Okay. Next. Need to fix the bridge. Bridge looking a bit awkward. Need to put more. While I've got this brown greeny colour, I might just add that over here as a highlight in these hills, leafy hills. And interesting, if I really wanted to be fastidious, there's a warm glow underneath the bridge, but I won't be putting that in at this stage, or I might, if I indicate it, it's just going to be very brief. Warm redness under there. It's reflecting up off the red. Doesn't quite work. See if I'm going to put it in. So anyway, I want to just fatten that up now and make that into a better shape. I put my finger down whenever I'm doing complicated or trying to get an accurate line. I'll put my finger down onto the canvas behind as a steadying, sort of instead of using one of those sticks that realist painters use. Think of the name in a minute. It's a hand rest, but it had a special name. Interestingly enough, there's cars on that road. I won't do that. I was just going to put them on, but that would be absolutely ridiculous. A couple of boats in the distance there. A couple more on this line there too. I'm going to put these boats in next, and they require white, so as thick a white as I can get with no water in it, and blue. I think I've got enough. I'll put the white up there, hopefully you'll be able to see it in the camera. The trick about these boats is that I'm just going to do a little dab of white here and there. I'm not going to paint an actual boat at all. Actually, I've just realised I've got a problem before I start that. I haven't put in that dark. I really need to add that dark area, the reflection of this, before I go do the boat, so that's a mistake. So when you do that, for me anyway, I'm going to just wipe that out. So that means it will dry quickly and I'll be able to paint over it straight away. Keep it as dry as possible. So go over what I did before. It comes almost out to the centre of the picture. Very thick for me. Half close your eyes and just try and see where you think it should go, down about that far. Then I'm going to do some thin, trail it out into the main part of the water. what's happening is that you'll have boats coming and going at different times. Looks like one boat's just gone past and left a little bit of a wake, and then you'll have other curves going in different directions. Do that. There is the reflection of the bridge, believe it or not. It comes down about there. It's a long way away from where the bridge is. Just going to take that off. See if I can do it very finely with the corner of the brush. Right, another one going this way. Put some vertical lines in there. From where I don't know, but they might be from boats. And some more, almost like little ladders going down through the reflections. So one of the tricks to making reflections like this is try and be positive. Go for it. Just say I'm going to do 6 and I'm going to put them like that. I'm going to do 4 over here. I'm going to leave it like that. I've got this option of bringing in a shadow underneath here, which I can't see in the water, so I'm just going to make it up. And I'm going to just run it, little lines out like that. Do some more here. Down the bottom here, I think I'll put some reeds in the water, because it's slow tide. While I've got that dark on my brush, I'm going to add it to the grass I've got here at the front. Now, I've got some fun things to do. There's a little duck with ducklings behind her, somewhere going up that river, who knows where. So I'm going to just use a little bit of the dark colour I've got here and make a tiny little duck, and make the, I'll do the wash first. The wash looks like it's just in a straight darker blue colour, so I'll get a nice blue on my brush. One side, one side, and then the other side. Now I'm going to wet the brush, a bit watercolory, and I'm just going to fill that in the middle with a little bit of water. Draw that dark, and draw those dark lines in together so that they've, make sure they're straight. Oh, yeah, idiot. I just blobbed into the yellow. Okay, how do we fix that? We drag it out straight away. Luckily there's business happening there, because I can pretend it's reflecting the yellow from the sky. Carelessness. So, blob of blue on it. Sometimes those sort of little accidents like that end up looking quite good, and you think, oh, I'd never have thought to do that. So putting a lovely pretty colour there, that turquoise colour. Kind of like that. I think I'll just leave that like that, sort of loose, lovely. Oh, I'll add the little ducklings while I'm here. Well, they are little dots following Mummy's wake. They're actually probably wakeboarding right behind her. I'll make her a little bit dark. Oh, and then you know what happens. A bit of water gets in there you didn't want. That's something I've really got to whinge about, is water getting in these ferrules and blobs onto your paper. So that's one reason why you might want to go for a better quality, more expensive brush. Now, this is annoying me. It's got to be perfect. If I made a mistake on it, I'd have to come back with the other colour to correct it. And I don't really want to have to do that, but it's possible. At this stage it's still okay. Right in there. Okay. Now, shouldn't be there, that little bit of light. I want that all to be dark there. I can do some reverse grass. I can paint it dark and then just come back down into the blades of grass there that are over the top. I'm just going to pretend that's a bit of bushland. When that dries off completely, it's still a fair bit wet there. I will add some more detail. Over here is very dry. I can go in there now with something that's interesting. And I'm thinking of adding a little bit of light grey. So blue, white, brown. So I've got a really pale neutral tint there. And I'm thinking of putting that over some of these bushland shapes. Forest, I guess you could call it. Take it to the other side of that roadway. I'll take something down there to make it look like there's more detail down there. Okay. Now I think I'm ready for those boats, which are going to be basically just little pieces of white paint, little dabs here and there. Small ones at the back there because they're a long way away. Basically just where the sun has hit them. It's not the whole boat, it's just the front corner of the boat. Some of them are higher boats, some of them are not. Oh, and there's one boat coming down the harbour there that's leaving a wake behind him, which is quite interesting. See if I can put that in without too much ado. Basically just a couple of white stripes, white strokes. Then I'll make him a little bit of a back on the boat so it's obvious that it's a boat coming. Now I'll go to the blue, I'll go to the pretty blue, which is the cerulean one. Put that on the front. Oh no, there's some. Still got some left from before, which is good. Hasn't dried out. Providing you put it down in a decent sized lump, it will stay wet. It's only when you put tiny bits out and you don't use them straight away that they'll dry. So I'm just adding various different shades of blue to the left hand sides of each one of these crafts to make it look like it's a thing in the water. Now I'm going to leave a little gap and repeat underneath each one what I've just done. So once again, you really got to be careful not to let too much water onto your brush at this stage of painting. Water's only good for cleaning your brush really. So I'm just putting a little dab under each boat, then I shall pull it down into the water. A blob, I call it a blob of paint. One above, one below, one below, one above, one below. Dry your brush. just drag it down, drag it down, drag it down, each one. Dry the brush on your cloth. Right. With a little bit of white, I can add the odd aerial mast, which gets reflected. Aerials get reflected. Sometimes they just have a little antenna for their TV sets. Sometimes they have little boats beside them, which once again deserve a reflection. Everything gets a reflection. This little boat coming up the harbour, I think need to re-establish his back so that it's obvious who he is. And then he's coming in. Probably been out fishing at that time of day. Okay, just adding a little bit of white here to these boats. Just had a good battle with this. Camera wasn't on, I don't think. This is hard, I'll tell you what. I think I'll put white on top of the pontoon. And on that part of it there. And I'll add some to these leaves, grasses at the front here. So it looks like white's picked up the for sun rays. Maybe a little bit over here. More like black though. I'm going to have a bit of fun with black here. And the black is going to just go right deep into some various spots. Put all these brushes away. Ready for washing because we're nearly finished. Just going to get solid black on my brush. I'll start with the bridge parts of it. Just theoretically it's pale, but I'm just being a little bit gung-ho with this black here, and I'm just going to fill it in some details where the shadows are around these rocks, behind the rocks themselves, in the nooks, crannies. I'm going to do some of the tree in black, not all of it, just some areas of it to make it disappear a bit more. Some of these leaves I'll put coming out, and if you have a leaf hanging out off a tree, people assume there's a little twig holding it on. You don't have to draw in the actual timber side of it. You just put clumps of leaves out in the open, like that, just there. Just do a couple up here. Start to make it look too same, vary it up a little bit. Don't do the same all over. Okay, so shadow under here, just assume there's shadow behind that tree. And I'll bring the black down here into the grass, so the back part of it is definitely in shadow. So the eye won't look to go there, the eye will come away from there. Down along the edge here, behind these boats, you just want to, it almost defines the boat by having black behind them. And some of it can go up into the mountain, especially near the foreground. Now that I see this over here, I just want to do a bit of a dry brush over the top of those white areas, just to dull those down. Dry brush means I'm just picking up the surface of the canvas, little spots. Add some detail. Tiny little dots here and there to the rocks, just to make them look as if there's more to it than a smooth brush stroke. Okay, I think that's about it. Fill that area in. So I've got the clean graduation of the sky coming down to the distant bridge. That said, now that I've done it in black, I'd like to go back over it with a bit of a grey colour. Just see what I can do there. Sometimes you can have a bit of fun with greying things out once they've got the solid shape already defined. Just doing it on the one side, leaving that side dark, just lightening that side. Alrighty, I think that's about it. I've finished. I will sign it as soon as I just finish this little tree business happening over there. I can see some trees that need finishing off. Okay. I can keep fiddling like that forever, but there comes a time when if you want a fresh painting that's not too laboured, you do need to stop. And once you say stop, then you see a whole lot of other things that you wish you'd done. But sometimes it forces you to step back. So I'll just put a quick signature on this, and I'll put it on eBay. I'm going to start selling my paintings, so it will be on eBay in the next day or two, hopefully by the time I've edited this video and put it up. Putting a little bit of white in my usual red signature because this paint's not quite strong enough to, and I'll just do an SP. I might spell it out. Okay, I'll fast forward this so you don't have to agonise with me over signing. Just to show you it is signed. And there, all done. Kind of. Just going to go a tiny bit more yellow, white. The water is a pain in the neck. I think I'll sack these brushes. It keeps just rolling out, even though you think you've knocked all the water out, it just keeps rolling out. So I'm just going to soften that up around the edge. This is where you can do a bit of a Van Gogh if you want to, and make your brush strokes more obvious. Like that. If I do that obvious brush stroke thing, that looks fine. Okay. Just come in for a little bit of a zoom in on some of the different areas. As you can see, it's very basic, very simple, easy brush strokes. There we go. Well, thank you for watching. It's Huntley Point near Sydney Harbour, or part of the Sydney Harbour outreaches. And my sister Kerry took the photo and I've painted it. Photo is available on my website for downloading, and you can copy it yourself or paint it and see how you go. The details of the paints are below, and if you're watching it on the TV, you'll need to go to a computer to see those details. And I'll have links to where you can buy this type of paint, and I'll have a list of my recommended paints. Brushes need to be cleaned. My job for now. So thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, please click the like button and subscribe, and click the notification bell. That way you'll know next time I upload a video. So thanks very much. Bye for now.